Yeah, don't worry about stopping me, Jonathan, anytime. It's kind of an informal talk, an informal chat between the group. So if someone wants to query anything, they're
Absolutely.
more than welcome.
Absolutely. Hey guys, welcome to our session. I'm Jonathan Traylor, host of Hope with Jonathan. It's an honor for me to be here in the 2022 Kidney Trails Summit, and it's a really exciting for me to introduce our next guest, our next speaker, a very influential individual all the way from Ireland. And so he's a two-time kidney transplant recipient who has an amazing story with battling kidney disease, dialysis, transplant, and much more. And when he's not swimming in the ocean, he's doing events just like this one. So you guys are in for a real treat. Let me introduce you to Mr. Darren Cawley.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I'm going to be with you for the next hour, and I hope you enjoy it. I hope I bring some insights and information that's useful to the Kidney Trails community, the kidney disease community, wherever you may be. So I'm going to go through my story and then some of the insights and backgrounds that over my 23 years of living with kidney disease, hopefully you'll find some of that useful. And Jonathan is on board here with me. If you have any questions or anything is unclear, especially my Irish accent, don't be afraid to chirp in and let me know.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. So I'll just start with a bit about myself. Just get this up here. So my own background, I live here in Ireland, the very west of Ireland, as in when I look out the window, I see the sea, and the next stop is America from us. So we're right on the coast of Europe. Beautiful, ordinary childhood, very healthy. In school, I did Gaelic football and soccer, excuse me, boxing, rugby. So I did all sorts of sports. I loved sports. And when I wanted to go to college, there was only one subject that I wanted to do. And that, of course, was sport. So I went to this University of Bedfordshire, which was in England, which is the country next to us. And I loved it. I had a great bunch of friends. I loved what we were studying. We didn't have too much time in classroom, so it was great. We were outside participating, playing, and my life was pretty much all planned out. I was going to probably be a PE teacher. That was kind of the goal, to work in fitness centers and then be a PE teacher. So things were looking great. In my second year of college, I started to get headaches, really bad headaches. My head was pounding. And the next thing, my vision started to go bad. And this was becoming a problem now because I played loads of sport. Plus I was studying. So when my eyesight started to go bad, sport started to suffer. And also I couldn't read the books properly that I was supposed to be reading to study for future exams. So one day at playing football, I went to catch the ball and I missed it and it whacked me in the face. And out of sheer embarrassment, I decided to go to the college doctor because I grew up with a very West of Ireland attitude that you never go to the doctor unless your leg is hanging off or you're dying. It was just we have this fear of doctors. So I went to the doctor, and after a few minutes, a few questions, she kind of said, well, maybe you should go and see an optician, because she assumed with headaches and blurred vision, I was trying to get out of my exams. And of course she was right. I was 100% trying to get out of my exams. So I went to see an optician. And after 5 minutes looking at my eyes, the optician sent me straight to the hospital. Now that came as a big surprise because I wasn't expecting that. I was thinking worst case scenario, I might need glasses, because obviously if you never use glasses, it's very hard to see. It's very hard to understand what it's like to need them. So I went to this ER room in this big hospital in England, and about 30 people were ahead of me. It was very busy, but I was the first person taken in. So whatever this optician wrote was obviously very persuasive. So I got taken in, they did a few little tests, and eventually someone checked my blood pressure. And my blood pressure was, excuse me, something like 200 over 116 or 17. So it was really high for a sporty guy, and they straight away, I was put lying down in a bed. They asked, was my parents on the way? And I said no, because they live in Ireland, and I had told them everything was okay. So they had to ring my parents and say, we've got a boy here with some serious health issues. He could have a stroke at any minute, so we need next to kin to fly back here to England and be by his side in case something goes wrong. Now, all this time, apart from the headaches and blurred vision and tiredness a bit, looking back, I knew I was probably feeling tired. I thought I was just being lazy. I thought everything was okay and that this was just a small thing. Eventually, over the course of the next few days, they did biopsies. They did some biopsies and they did some other tests, blood tests, and the results came back. And, you know, as if you're familiar with the hospital system, a load of doctors and nurses seemed to gather around the bed and they said, we're really sorry. You have chronic end-stage renal failure. Now that didn't worry me too much because I had never heard of any of them words before. So I was kind of going, okay, that doesn't help. And then they said, your kidneys have failed. And my mother was with me at the time and she started bawling, crying. And I remember asking, you know, am I going to die? Is this a death sentence? And he said, no. You'd probably end up on a thing called dialysis. And again, I had never heard the word dialysis before. So that came as a shock to me. And lo and behold, you know, in less than 10 days later, I was on dialysis. I had a big tube coming out of my neck here and dialysis had started. So essentially, I went from this healthy sports and fitness study student to chronic illness in the space of, you know, 10 days. So it was a huge, huge shock. And something very difficult for me to deal with, as you can imagine, as a young person. I got my fistula soon after that. You all probably know the fistula, but as you can see, it's a fine big thing. It's still there. You know, this is over 20 years old. I've been very lucky with my sight. But rather than talk about the hospital environment, my main emphasis on my talk here is more on the mental and emotional aspects of living with this disease. Now, the problem for me started when I left the hospital. So I spent about 2 weeks in hospital, getting my blood pressure back to normal, getting rid of the fluid and the waste products, starting dialysis. And then I was sent home. You know, I walked out that hospital and the healthcare team had designed protocols, treatments, everything for my physical body, but my whole life had been taken away. All my plans, all my goals, my ambitions, my path that I was going to take in life was now gone. So, and there was nobody there to help with these things, no treatments for that sort of side of things. So I found that very difficult. I was a healthy sports and fitness study student who now couldn't do sport. I dumped my girlfriend. I wanted to give up on college. My mindset was all over the place. And these are the things we need to talk about because these are the pain points of dialysis. And we can't really move forward with kidney failure until we start to get that acceptance and start to think about the future. So again, dialysis, most people know high blood pressure. It's a big issue for people. Fluid restriction, excuse me, bit of a cough. Fluid restrictions are something that took a huge amount of getting used to. You know, having to live on one glass. This is a Guinness glass, but it's not used for Guinness too often. It's a normal glass. A glass of water a day, you know, it's not enough. It's not nearly enough to live with. So that's definitely a challenge. And then other things were, of course, diet. You could, just touch my screen here. You couldn't eat whatever you wanted. You know, an Irish guy, we love potatoes, you know, so I had to learn to peel the potatoes, slice them up, boil them, empty out the water, boil it again. And, you know, you're eating the mush really that's left over. So to stop eating all these vegetables that you'd normally eat became a huge challenge. Again, the label, excuse me, sick and tired. Very hard to be this sick and tired person all the time. And that leads to this kind of sense of isolation and loneliness. Because I was in college with all these sport and fitness people. And now I was this pale, sickly boy who was having great trouble with just dealing with life's issues. So these are kind of some of the other side of things, the lack of time. So the first three might be physical, but the other three, sick and tired, lonely, isolated, not part of the group anymore, lack of time, they're mental and emotional stuff. So when we are dealing with kidney failure, we're not dealing with just the specifics of an illness. We're dealing with the mental, emotional, the social, the economical challenges that come with this disease. So a lot of people, certainly I came to know, being sick was called for me being vertically ill. And that meant I was standing up I was walking around. I looked normal, but inside, whew, I was toxic. I was feeling terrible, and life was not going the way I expected to go, which was a challenge, which was a difficulty, and certainly in them first few years. So you have to learn to get on with it. And in that vein, I found this quote great. You don't drown simply by plunging into the water. You only drown if you stay beneath the surface. So we learned that challenges occur. And I love the whole ethos behind kidney trails, but from my opinion, it's not a trail, it's a roller coaster, because it will bring you up and down. And transplants, life is great, and then you lose transplant, down for dialysis, and you feel great one day and down the next day. Life becomes irrational, it comes all over the place, it becomes a real challenge. And just I threw in two words there: courage and trust. Certainly one of the first things we need to do is trust our healthcare team. They know more than us. We go in there totally ignorant, totally with no knowledge. And so the nurses, for me, the renal nurses, they were the heroes. They were my best buddies going into dialysis, because the doctors just talk to the charts, they talk to the notes, they talk to the bloods, and they talk over your head, you know. And it was the nurses that used to have to translate all that for me, to teach me, to guide me, to show me that there was life after and during this dialysis thing. So nurses, trusting them and letting the system unfold in front of me, because it was for my betterment. The other thing was, around this time, I was told a story about courage, and I found it really helped me. So this story, briefly, it was of and I believe it's a true story that happened. It was about a young boy who had I think it was leukemia. He had a blood disease, a blood disorder. And at one stage in this treatment, he needed a blood transfusion. And so his parents at the time, whatever, had a cold or a flu, and they couldn't donate their blood. But he had a little sister, and she was maybe 6 or 7 years old. So they asked the sister, would you mind, right? Your brother is very sick and he needs your blood. And she kind of thought about this for a minute, and she took a deep breath and coughed maybe, and she said, okay, I'll do it. I'll give him my blood. And they were kind of wondering why she was so nervous and anxious, but you know, they were more inclined to think about the brother. So as they sat down to do the transfusion, the little girl was kind of very nervous and anxious, and she asked the doctor that was doing the transfusion, she said, will it take long? And the doctor didn't quite understand what she meant. And he said, will what take long? And she said, will it take long for me to die? Because the poor girl, when she would ask for her blood, she thought she was given all her blood to save her brother's life. So the courage that that little girl had, she was willing to lay down her life for her brother. So who was I to kind of complain and moan about little operations and little things? So that really persuaded me, we have to have courage. We need that courage to face our illness, to face our disease, and to see that there is an outcome and a future, even with these diseases. And I guess that's why we're here at the Kidney Trail Summit, to highlight these things, that we've plenty of role models here to show you how you get through, how you can go through, like in my case, 23 years, 2 transplants, 2,000 probably dialysis sessions, and I'm still happy and healthy. So that's what we're here to do. We're kind of here to show that there's life after kidney failure, and there's life with kidney failure. So this is me, kind of pictures a few years ago when I was on dialysis. Again, loads and ups and downs. I got my first transplant, very luckily, after only about 6 months on the waiting list. So that was, you know, mind blowing. I was delighted. I was over the moon. So the transplant was going very well. I had thought that I can forget all about the difficulties of dialysis. Excuse me, all about the difficulties of dialysis and all the difficult times I went through. I had this transplant and I could go on and live happily ever after. Unfortunately, after less than 2 years, I picked up some sort of viral infection and I lost the transplant. I had to have what's called a kidney nephrectomy, a transplant nephrectomy, which meant all the pain and suffering of a transplant, but without the happy ending. Because the day after having the kidney removed, I was wheeled back into the dialysis unit. And you hear all the old familiar noises and sounds, and it's not absolutely not a nice place to be, because especially as a younger person, the average age of someone on dialysis in my hospital, anyway, here in the west of Ireland, would have been in their 60s and 70s. And I was going on dialysis for the second time at only 22. And I spent the next 9 years, every 2 days, going into hospital for dialysis. So some very difficult times for me to deal with. So again, you can see I'm underweight. I look kind of palish and black eyes, anemic. I couldn't do the work I wanted. I couldn't work full time most of the time because I felt tired. And of course, you have this draining tiredness that just permeates your system, especially when you're finished on dialysis. You don't particularly feel fantastic, like jumping around the place. You feel bad. Again, these are some of the pain points of dialysis, of living with kidney disease. And of course, time. Every 2 days going into hospital, you have to get to the hospital. You have to take about a half an hour to get on the machine at least, then spend your 3 or 4 hours on dialysis, and then wait for the bleeding to stop, wait for the needles to come out, wait for it to stop bleeding, the lovely fistula, and then slowly make your way home and probably back to bed. That would have been normal. So time, it takes so much time of your life. And of course, throughout my 20s, 9 years, I felt like life was passing me by. I was missing out on so much. A lot of people in Ireland, they would go to America for the summer to work, or to England, or they'd travel to Australia, or they might tour around Europe or something like that. I couldn't do any of that. Even going with friends for a weekend away, getting dialysis and moving things around, and then not being able to socialize like everyone else. These are all the reality of living with kidney disease. So it's important to understand them, I think, for people who don't know, that it's not easy. And we strongly empathize with you here at Kidney Trails. We strongly empathize with these challenges and difficulties. But then we have to also highlight that that doesn't mean that has to be your story. You can still be positive, proactive, and outgoing within the confines set by dialysis. Now, I was lucky after I got my second transplant. Above a lot of things, I learned I could grow a beard, which was great. Again, we did that for a charity event. I got married to my dear wife, still my wife. I now have 2 children. But throughout all that journey, I learned so much. You can see some of the realities of getting a transplant. Your weight will increase, not just thanks to steroids, but because you have a free and easy diet. You're so strict with your diet while you're on dialysis. Afterwards, you have the luxury of eating pretty much whatever you want. And I still indulge in that. I pretty much eat whatever I want. I'm always hungry. So again, a better color, time. In terms of career, I could go back working more. I went back to college. I did a master's in health promotion to kind of back up my kind of public speaking that I do. And the social differences were enormous. Like that first year, I ran a half marathon. We went to America, to Boston, to visit friends. We went traveling around Ireland. So all these fantastic things you can do when you get the transplant, as opposed to what you were kind of limited to do while on dialysis. So that's some of the things. One thing I love to highlight is PTS, so post-traumatic stress. Now, when you go through something like kidney failure, it's a very much a traumatic event. And a lot of people will suffer from post-traumatic stress. I'm pretty sure I did, going through all that in my early 20s. But then there's this other thing. It's called post-traumatic growth. And you'll see a lot over the next few days, experiences of people who went through these traumatic events, but instead of experiencing stress, long-term stress, they've experienced growth. And I like to think I'm one of them people, in that I'm a much better person today because I have all these experiences than I would have been without them. So now I'm a very resilient person. I've developed these coping skills thanks to kidney failure, thanks to the disease. So that's a big thing I'm keen to share. You have to try, if you can, find growth in adversity. And that might sound very condescending and difficult things to say if you're in the cold face, if you're plugging away on dialysis all the time. But again, it was during that 9 years on dialysis that I changed my mindset. I changed my outlook, and I changed the person I was going to be moving forward. So post-traumatic growth, I think it's a lovely way of looking at going through a traumatic event rather than going through post-traumatic stress. So it's just something to think about. You can Google it and look it up. It's a whole field of psychology now. And the final thing I put in here is a quote. Now, it takes a bit of thinking about this one. The quote is, damaged people are dangerous. And the reason is because they know how to survive. So I really like that. Damaged people are dangerous because they know how to survive. And that's what adversity has taught me. That I have been damaged. I have went through horrible times. But because I'm so strong, I know how to survive. I know how to overcome adversity. I have this stores of resilience. There's very little that can get me down because I know what's important. Our health, our well-being is important. Small things that people cry and whinge about, you know, they're not on the grand scale of things important. So if you go through challenges, especially I talk to young people in schools, don't fear the challenges, don't fear the bad times, because they will teach you more than a nice, happy, carefree life ever will. So damaged people are dangerous because they know how to survive. One of the other learnings I guess I like to mention is all about quality of life. So I'm all about quality of life. But you can divide that into two things, and people get confused here. People think lifespan is what's important. How long you live is what's important. It's not at all. It's all about how long you live with health, with good health, that you can prosper and grow and move around and do what you need to do in life. Because lifespan, for me, you can be lying in a hospital bed for years. You could be kept alive by a machine. And in the medical community, oh, we saved his life, we kept him alive for 3 or 4 years. There might be zero quality of life and zero quality of health because they may be stuck in a hospital. So we need to appreciate the time we have when we're healthy and use that quality of life rather than think about, oh, I want to live to be 100. Forget about living to be 100. Live the best version of yourself right now if you're in good health or if you have the potential for good health. So these were just two pictures. This is me lying in hospital, even on dialysis. I was playing a form of non-contact rugby and I snapped tendons on my fingers. So I was in hospital because it was the same arm as my fistula. So it was bad, above bad, above bad. I had to have this cast for 6 months and they put 2 holes into the cast so that they could do dialysis within it. So it was a real challenging time. And the other picture then, I mentioned at the beginning, it's life lessons from the fastest sick person in Europe. Now that's just a light-hearted remark. When I won the gold medal at the European Transplant and Dialysis Games, my friend said, does that make you the fastest sick person in Europe? So we kind of had a laugh, a nice relaxed look at it. Even the transplant games, we know them over here as the spare parts Olympics, because you have to have a kidney, a spare part from somebody else. So not to take life too serious. And I love that. I don't take life too serious. So it was a great, you know, a personal achievement to win at the games. But the games for all of us here are about taking part, about improving your health and improving the mental and emotional health that goes with it, because you're surrounded by these positive people at these transplant and dialysis games. So another thing I learned on dialysis was you can challenge your body. You can still live a fascinating and interesting life. Every day there's a mountain quite close to where I live. It's called Croagh Patrick, after St. Patrick, our patron saint. And it's a beautiful, if you could Google Croagh Patrick, you'll see this beautiful pyramid-shaped mountain with a little church on top. It normally takes 2 or 3 hours to climb it. But every Christmas day, even on dialysis, I used to climb that mountain. Now, I would feel terribly sick after it, especially trying to have the special diet and trying to eat the Christmas dinner. But I felt I had achieved something. And going through the pressure and the strain of that was worth it, because I felt normal. I felt I'd achieved something. So we should all have these little things where we step slightly outside our comfort zone, even on dialysis, because more often than not, we are capable of achieving more than we think we're able for. So we need to start stepping outside of our comfort zone. And I wrote a little thing there called Goya. And one of the authors from that book, The Secret, was in Ireland, and I went to hear him speak. Michael Beckwith. And he was a very inspiring man. And he very seriously told us about the law of Goya. And nobody knew what it meant until he said it was the law of get off your ass. So that really shook me up, and I love that saying. So sometimes, especially on dialysis, you feel tired, you feel lethargic, you feel like you've no energy. sometimes you have to just get up off your ass and give it a go. Just go for a walk, go for a small bit of exercise, put on your runners and get out there. The other thing, after I got the transplant 10 years ago now, myself and another transplant recipient, we swam across this bay in the west of Ireland. We do these things regularly to promote the gift of life, which is promoting donor awareness and the gift that gives to everybody that does it. Even lately, as Jonathan alluded to, last winter we decided to get into the Atlantic Ocean every day for 100 days in a row. And that was one of the hardest things I did. But it was in the height of COVID. I was stuck at home all the time, and the only thing I had close by was the sea. So myself and a friend, we took on that challenge, and it was a mental challenge rather than a physical challenge to a large degree, because it was incredibly hard. But pain and exhilaration. It was painful getting in, but we always felt absolutely exhilarated on getting out. We've achieved something for that day, and we could hold our head up high and kind of feel better about ourselves because of that. So the law of get off your ass, try not to forget that. So the next part of my talk is trying to give something back. I've spent a lot of time over lockdown kind of developing my thought processes on living with kidney failure, to put it into some sort of framework, because I'm 23 years now with kidney failure, and I have this degree in sports and I have a master's in health promotion. So, and all this experience of living with kidney disease. So this is a bit of what I came out with, right? And the three things for me were acceptance, attitude, and action. And they're the three things that really, when I retrospectively look back and think about the last 20 or 30 years, how did I get through that? How am I a positive, outgoing person, even after going through 11 years on dialysis and 2 transplants? Well, the first thing was acceptance, right? Acceptance is, for me, the bottom rung of the ladder. Until you accept your illness, accept the new life that you will now have to lead, accept the limitations, the pain points, and the challenges, you know, that's where you have to begin. So by accepting things, accepting your current state, you can then begin to move forward. Because when you accept your illness, you also accept all the limitations that come with it. And you have to start to develop your life around those limitations. Because you can still live a good life, but it won't be easy. And once you understand that, you cut your cloth to fit the disease, to fit the illness. Now, that's very hard to do. It takes time. But until you accept that you're not the same person you are without kidney failure, some people have the same mindset. They still want to do everything they always did. They still want to eat whatever they used to like eating. They still want to get all the exercise they used to always get. They still want to work full time like they always worked. But with kidney failure, it will suck the life out of you, certainly at the beginning. So we have to understand the difficulties and challenges that come with that disease. And when we accept it, then we can start to move forward. Then we can start to grow as this new person. Not a worse person or a better person straight away, but just a different version of yourself. Now, it's hard to get our heads around it, but acceptance is key. And then the next step is attitude. When we accept where we are, we can start to develop a resilience attitude. Now, to do that, we may have to reinvent ourselves. We may have to change our personal story. So for me, I was a sports and fitness studies student. I'm going to be a PE teacher, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to travel, and all that disappeared. So I had to reinvent myself as Darren Cawley, someone with kidney failure. And that took time. It took a great deal of time. So you have to reinvent yourself. You kind of, to a large degree, I heard it described, you have to separate yourself from these mental tram lines which you were on, these mental trails or railway lines. So for me, my life was planned in a certain way. Suddenly that train has stopped. So I had to separate from them mental tram lines and learn and grow in this new reality I found myself in. So your attitude, developing a positive attitude, became very, very important. And then finally, all the mental and emotional stuff you do is inside your head until you take action. And that's, again, why a lot of people will be listening to the Kidney Trail Summit, is to find points of action that they can start doing. And for me, it's in developing personal skills that are in alignment with you and the person you have to become. Now, developing personal skills could mean, we heard from Rosa, that you now have this specific and special diet if you're on dialysis, and even with the transplant. So you have to learn to cook and care for yourself in a certain way. In terms of exercise, you're limited in some degrees to what you can do. So you have to develop skills in that area. So for me, action was the key point. So again, you can do all the positive stuff in the world yourself, but it's not until you go through these processes of acceptance, attitude, and action that things can finally change for you and you can become positive and proactive while living with kidney disease. So I hope that's helpful. Now, just to narrow it down again, I wrote a little ebook a couple of years ago, and it's called 5 Ways I Tackled and Thrived and, living with kidney failure. And these are 5 of the things that I just picked out of the many things that we could talk about. So positive mindset. Now, a lot of these are interactive. They work very well together. But in terms, how am I doing, Jonathan? I'm not going too fast, I hope.
You're doing amazing, Darren. Keep going, brother.
There's no breakage, no stoppage, no questions or anything yet, no?
Not at the moment. You're doing amazing. Keep rolling.
So positive mindset. I hope, as you can see today, I am a positive person. This isn't an act. It's not put on for anyone. But I went from being a very low and feeling depressed, kind of down person to becoming this person today. And this didn't happen after the transplant. This happened while I was on dialysis. Now, the first thing I did was I stopped watching TV and daytime TV while I was on dialysis. I started to use dialysis. I kind of changed my mindset, and dialysis became my private time to myself. So I would spend the first hour reading, and I'd always read nonfiction. So I learned a great deal about positive people, biographies and things like that. The second thing is I started taking exercise, so all the other areas come under the banner really of changing your positive mindset, and one feeds into the others. Now, on the mental front, I love affirmations. And before I got into them, people think they're wishy-washy, make-believe stuff. But in effect, through affirmations, you're rewiring your brain to think and act in a different way. And that became very powerful for me. Role models. Again, for me, going to the transplant dialysis games was a life-changing event, because up to that point, the only people I knew with kidney failure were 60 and 70-year-old people on dialysis. So my frame of reference was all wrong. I saw myself as a sick person, like I was sick, every part of me. Where in effect, when I went to these games, I realized, no, my arms are working perfectly, my legs, my head is working pretty good, my legs, my heart, my lungs. It was only the kidneys that were giving me trouble. Now, I know it affects your whole body, but I had to stop seeing my whole self as being sick person. I'm a healthy person with kidney issues. And that kind of twist and change, that came from viewing other patients, like what you're doing here today, watching other people who have went through these experiences and kind of learn how, wow, I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know I could think like that. I didn't know people can get through their illness with that sort of mindset. And that's what we're highlighting. And role models was enormous for that. Exercise, it's not for everyone, but everyone does need to do some exercise. Like, I'm into exercise and sport because I always was a sporty person. I come from a sporty family. My parents were sporty. I have 4 sisters. So I think the reason I was so big into sport was just to get out of the house to a large degree. With 4 girls around, it wasn't easy growing up, I assure you. So I did all the sports you can imagine just to get out of the house sometimes. So exercise is important to me. And as I said, reading was massive. It was taking me away from this dialysis scene and putting me in a book, into something positive, proactive, and forward reaching. So going through some of them, affirmations first. Again, I am was the affirmations I started using. So I'll just give you an example. I would say, and I still say these things, I am happy and healthy. I am honest and loving. I am confident and courageous. I am decisive and enthusiastic. I am energetic and imaginative. And I go on that list like that. Now, at the time when you're sitting on a dialysis bed or sitting at home feeling sorry for yourself, saying I am happy and healthy doesn't sound quite right. It sounds like a hard thing to do. But I said them for years. I said them continuously through my head. And I don't know. I started to become much more positive. I am happy and healthy. Now it's my reality. It became my current reality. And they say that love is the highest form of emotion. So the next one I had was, I love God, I love me, I love life, I love family. I love my inner peace, and I love my health. So that was an affirmation I used to say a great deal. And I'd say it so quickly. I know it so well now at this time. I love God, I love me, I love life, I love money, I love my inner peace, and I love my health. You can change it around to whatever you want to become, whatever type of person you want to rewire your brain to become. And then gratitude was another one I said, things like, thank you, God, for bringing motivation and success to my life. Thank you, God, for bringing a successful transplant to my life. I said several things like that, even when I didn't have a successful transplant. So as time went on, it was proven correct. I now have a successful transplant. And again, finally, I had a health mantra. And I read that in a book, an Indian book on Ayurveda. And the health mantra that I used, I've said it a million times, is every molecule, every cell, every tissue of my beautiful body constantly renews itself in perfect health. And I would say that repeatedly. So every molecule, every cell, every tissue of my beautiful body constantly renews itself in perfect health. So these affirmations said repeatedly, even though I might have been in a negative environment, really created this positive outcome for me. So they mightn't be for everyone, but certainly it's worth a try, because the total cost to doing this is zero. Most of the things that I would recommend to you, exercise, reading, and affirmations, they're all free. You don't need to buy the latest app. You don't need to go out and get anything. When I was on dialysis for the 9 years, there was no smartphones. The internet was just coming in. So you had to use what you had. And they were, for me, affirmations were terrific. Again, when it comes to role models, the transplant games were enormous. These were two friends I met at the transplant games. Now, there were transplant and dialysis games. So I was on dialysis for a lot of these games. The guy on our right as we look is James, and he became a massive role model for me, because I thought I couldn't work much, I couldn't do business, I couldn't make money, whereas James had a transplant. He had a beautiful partner who was in love with, and he married, he had a child. He owned a big business that he ran himself. Again, even with kidney failure, he could do all these things. And again, unconsciously, by seeing someone else do it, it kind of unconsciously gives you permission to do the same. So if he can do it, I can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. And that's the way it felt for me. Role models were so, so important. And I made these fantastic friends at these games, all from different countries also. We always keep in touch. And it's been a real life changer to have role models. Again, the Kidney Trails team, that's the idea behind the summit. Now you'll have some role models who went through what you did, empathize, and you can only empathize when you go through the pain points of what you may be going through. So with that, with these role models, I learned so much. Now, my other role models at the time, I can skip that, is reading. I'm surrounded here by books in my little library at home, but I used to read all non-fiction books, mostly non-fiction books, a few fiction sometimes when you're feeling very tired. But, Paulo Coelho, positive books, Lessons from the Top, book on sports. I read huge amount of biographies, because most biographies are the same. They have this roller coaster where at the end you have the successful, brilliant person. But to become successful and brilliant, they had to go through the roller coaster of life. They had to go through adversity, usually massive adversity. And by doing that, they learned the skills to live a great life. And that's why I read biographies, business biographies, personal, spiritual ones, everything and anything I could read, I read. And that comes out in you. What you put into your mind will come back out. So between reading and affirmations, it really helps to develop this positive mindset, of which I try and carry forward today as much as possible. So certainly try and change as much of your reading as you can from pleasure to purpose, if you know what I mean. So not as much fiction, a bit more non-fiction, but stuff that's useful, so that after you read it, maybe with a book and pen, take down some notes, write down some motivational quotes in your own little journal. And if you do that for a few weeks and a few months, you'll have a book of positivity that you created of all the stuff that you loved. So I've got loads of little notebooks here, full of scripts, full of quotes, full of famous sayings that really inspire me when I'm feeling down. Because as positive as I am, I still have tough days. I still have challenging days. I still have days when I don't feel well, or I don't feel getting out of bed. So don't think I'm this happy-go-lucky all the time. There is tough challenges that life will throw at us. and you don't have to be sick to get them challenges. So certainly moving more of your reading from pleasure to purpose can have a very positive impact on you. And taking notes, writing down sayings and stories really, really helps in uncovering the person you strive to become, changing that personal story, not changing who you are, but just creating a better version of yourself within the confines of your illness. So here we are coming up to today. I'm still doing a lot of public speaking, something I would never have done as a young person. I hated public speaking. When I went to college, all my modules were picked on a simple premise, in that if you had to speak in front of people, I didn't do it. But then with living with kidney disease, my story, and I'm hoping other people will do the same, is that I started to go into schools and I started telling my story and promoting donor awareness. These donor cards you can see. This is in Ireland. Maybe it's the same in America. And wow, that opened up so much for me. I went into this little school in the west of Ireland and I talked to kind of 15, 16, 17-year-olds. And after I gave the talk, I got a massive round of applause. And I felt amazing inside. Because up to that point, I was a sick person. I felt like I was a drain on society because I was being kept alive by a machine. And it wasn't a nice way to be. Whereas when I stood up, overcame my fear, and started talking to people and sharing my experiences, wow, the feedback was amazing. And when you go through a difficulty like this, Jonathan, all the guys here will tell you the same thing. It's great to be able to feel like you're giving back. So I was giving back to these young people. And doing them free talks ended up getting the opportunity to speak at what's called the European Parliament, which is a huge thing for me, it was at the time. And from speaking at the European Parliament, I got asked to go around Europe to different patient organizations, nurses conferences, to businesses, some of the big pharma companies, and share my story. Excuse me. And finally, I felt like I was doing something worthwhile. I felt like I was doing something useful. I was now contributing to society. And in terms of mental and emotional health, that felt awesome. So from sitting in a chair, being a sick person, now I could give back. Now I could help society. I could become an active member, a respected member. Even though I was sick, I was now doing something worthwhile. And so even going into your local community hall, sharing your story with others can give hope in that they too can overcome their adversity. So we shouldn't kind of shy away from sharing these difficult, challenging times we have, because we all have them. Everybody has difficult and challenging times, but through getting through them, it's not about even getting through them. It's about learning the lessons as you go through them, even though they won't be fun. Learning the lessons, sharing them lessons really gives a great deal of hope and encouragement to other people. So I always strongly recommend standing up and trying to give talks, because it'll help you as much as it'll help other people. And of course, today now I have two beautiful little boys who are crazy and I don't get half enough sleep. That's a few years ago, that picture. They're now 3 years old and 5 years old, and they have very peculiar names, Irish names, Irla and Keelan. And Irla and Keelan are in preschool and childminders, and they're getting on brilliant. We're very, very happy to have, because obviously when you go through kidney failure, there's stages where you feel, well, I'm never going to have a family and I'm never going to meet anyone and life is going to be horrible. But slowly, as you change your mindset, good things start to open up and come your way. A little story. My mother, because I had kidney failure and I couldn't go to the toilet for 9 years, she bawled her eyes out when she heard my wife was expecting, because she thought because I had kidney trouble, I couldn't have kids. So of course I had to explain it's a different operating procedure totally. There was no problems there. And here we are today with two boys that are the gift of life. So getting a transplant is the gift of life, but it's what it allows you to do really becomes the real gift of life. It allows you to expand your horizons so much. Life on dialysis is difficult, but it is life and it becomes ordinary. And when you get a transplant, hopefully you will, if you're looking for one, life becomes extraordinary. And so we are always filled to the top with gratitude, because we know what difficulties are like. We know what challenges are like. And we know that life is not fair or is not always easy. That's the reason I titled my notes, and my future course may be called From Victimhood to Resilience. Because when you get kidney failure, you feel like a victim. Because 99% of the time, it's not because you abused your body. It's not because you ate or drank the wrong thing. It's just a twist of fate that you end up getting kidney failure. It's not hereditary in my family. No one in my family has ever had it. And me, a sports and fitness study student, to get kidney failure, I felt bad. I felt like a victim. But through the years, through uncovering, through going through some of the stuff I've talked about, I went from feeling like a victim to someone of immense resilience. I have huge resilience. There's very little that can get me down or can hurt me now, because I know I have that inner capacity to deal with any issues that go my way. So that's kind of like more of a happy ending side of things. This, folks, is my last slide, and I always kind of I love this little mantra that I have. It's called managing limits, exceeding expectations. And that's what life was about for me for a very long time. It's about managing the limitations of kidney disease. And there's loads of limitations, but by managing them, you're using your healthcare team, you're using the doctors, the nurses, the dietitians, you're using your new circle of friends who have kidney failure, which we all have access to now online. And so it's helping each other to manage the limits that kidney failure places on us. And if we can manage them limits, then we can go on to exceed expectations. Because I feel there's far too much emphasis on people who become sick and get kidney failure. They are told to slow down, to sit in the chair all day, not to be up, not to be out, not to be active. Now, when you sit down all day and do nothing, wow, your body is not designed for that. Your body is designed for movement. Your mind is designed to be mentally challenged now and again. So we have to step away. We have to step up a place. Now, it's a difficult thing to hear for a lot of people. And it's something I've struggled with greatly. So I say it with trepidation and with empathy, in that sometimes it wasn't due to kidney failure that I didn't do certain things. It was because I was lazy. And that's it. It's a fine line between being sick and being lazy. And sometimes, if you're not sure whether you're being sick or being lazy, put on your shoes or your runners and go for a walk, and you'll feel so much better. If you start reading a book, you'll get into it and you'll feel so much better. So manage the limits, exceeding expectations is definitely someplace we have to go. Now, I'm going to read out something before I finish, something I was writing to kind of conclude my own thoughts about kidney failure and how to kind of best deal with it. So it's based around the fact that someone told me once, after hearing me speak, he said, remember, it's not your story that matters. It's the lessons from your story that matter. And I was told to share the lessons, not just my story. So your story is the past. You cannot go back and change your story. But the lessons, however, you can take with you in developing a stronger and a more positive mindset. So I love that. These lessons are of value as you move through your life. So the lessons we get from living with kidney failure, resilience, coping skills, overcoming adversity, they'll stay with us as we grow and develop as people. So the whole idea behind the course I was writing, and what this whole Kidney Summit, Kidney Trail Summit is about, is using the lessons pulled from our experiences to help make your story better. And there's a lovely quote by a lady named Amy Mullins, and she did a terrific TED Talk. She's a lady who lost one of her legs, very sadly. So she says, our responsibility, and I believe this as part of the Kidney Trails team, our responsibility is not simply shielding those we care for from adversity, but it's in preparing them to meet it well. So that's why I spend a lot of time and maybe challenge you in sometimes talking about the pain points. So we're not trying to hide them or shield you from them. We're trying to prepare you for them, because if you have kidney failure, there's challenges coming in your future. It's not an easy disease. There's no easy way out of it or through it. So we're here with empathy and understanding, I hope, not to protect you from what's ahead, but to prepare you in how to deal with it. Because we've went through these horrible times. We've went through everything you can imagine, the whole team. And so we're trying to give you the lessons so that you don't have to suffer as we often have suffered. So hopefully you'll take some of this on board. So we need to highlight these realities of kidney disease and help each other get through them easier with as little suffering as possible. Now, we help you kind of to see light at the end of the tunnel. So it's about moving you from being a victim of an illness to being a strong, resilient person capable of overcoming adversity. Now, everyone has their own story, and using the techniques that we're going to show you over the next few days, they'll greatly enhance your resilience, because we have this resilience, and it'll greatly enhance your ability to deal with your kidney disease journey. A word I love to use is bounce back ability. So that's what happens when I go through difficult times. You know, sometimes you nearly reach a breaking point. You're like a tree in the wind. So having this resilience, it gives you the ability to bend during difficult and challenging times, but not break, to come back from them difficult times, to hang in there, because on the other side of them difficult times is growth, is personal growth, and you'll be a stronger, better person as a result. So accept your situation, have the right attitude towards your illness, and finally, take action to enable you to develop the personal skills that you need to fight on. So hopefully this is the structure you learn from us, from the different guys, and you'll be able to bring it forward into your own life. So I know I've given a huge amount of information, and I spoke too quick there probably sometimes that you mightn't have heard everything. But again, no more than Anthony and Jonathan and all the team, we're coming from a good place. We're coming from adversity, and we feel like we're coming out the other side with the lessons to help you. So on that note, keep managing the limitations, but always try and exceed the expectations of others. Because when you have kidney failure, people have very low expectations of you. So show them what you can do with your illness. Don't hide away from it. Be the best version of yourself that you can be. So thank you very much, guys.
Wow, what an incredible outpouring from Darren Cawley. I'm blown away. I have sat here and literally just inspired by you. You've got me so inspired at this moment. I'm ready to throw on my athletic gear and take off and go on a run, Darren. So inspiring and incredible information. And if you're not inspired by this, you may want to check your pulse and make sure that you got a heartbeat, because this has been a true treat from Darren Cawley. And I could literally listen to you, Darren, for hours without getting tired of hearing your positive message. And incredible. I really truly believe that you have inspired many with what you've shared today. And I truly believe, as you know, I'm a host of Hope with Jonathan. So I truly believe that you've delivered a message of hope to those out there that are listening and watching. Darren, just for our viewers, where does this passion come from? You mentioned finding growth in adversity and Goya and managing limits, exceeding expectation. Where does this passion? I believe I know, but maybe for our audience out there, where does the passion come from, Darren?
Well, a lot of people are kind of expect me to say this happened and then I was this perfect, positive person. But this took years, them years on dialysis. After losing the transplant, I was in a bad place. I was being wheeled into hospital and life was just terrible. I didn't see a good future. And then slowly, by using the techniques that I've showed you, because I don't want to tell anybody anything that I haven't experienced myself, but changing my attitude, meeting people with kidney failure who are positive, stopping seeing myself as a sick person. Like, I'm embarrassed to say that when I was younger, I used to go up, when you were getting onto an airplane, children or those with disabilities get on first, and I used to say, oh, I have kidney failure, can I get on, and like that was shameless, because my mind was I was a sick person. And it was only through changing that mindset. I'm not a sick person, I'm a healthy person with health issues, kidney issues. Right? As I said, my head, my legs, my arms, everything else is working pretty much okay. It was just my mind that was holding me back. So kidney disease changed when I changed how I viewed it. And so that took time. I'm not going to lie. It's not something that just, light bulb moment. No. To become a positive, proactive person, I spent years doing affirmations, even though I didn't believe in them. Sometimes it was hard because life was hard. So slowly but surely getting on with life, making little changes, like when you have kidney failure, you still have all these friends that you had originally, but sometimes you have to let some of them go because they want to bring you in their direction. but I had limitations that I couldn't go in that direction. So I had to change who I was in some degree. And I had to meet other people who were more aligned with the person I was choosing to be. So all these different factors came into the positive mindset change.
Awesome, Darren. Awesome. We'd like to take an opportunity for those of you watching out there, for our viewers. If you have a question for Darren, please go ahead and drop that question and ask that question. Let us know that you're out there and interact with us. We would love to have your question asked, and Darren would be pleased to answer it for you.
Yeah, it's great. Some people have seen the books that I put up. Some people have them. Some people have read some of them. So, a lot of people are on the same road that I'm on.
Absolutely. And it's awesome to listen to someone like you, Darren, to connect with and listen to your story, to let other people out there know that, you can make it, and you can live a great life with one kidney, and you're not alone. I think that's a huge factor. A lot of people, face this, and support is definitely crucial, and I believe that that's what carried you through as well. You had the support of your family and your wife, and of course now you have children. So I truly believe support is crucial.
Yeah, support and gratitude. We have to remember gratitude. Like, people often hate dialysis, and I remember when I started dialysis, he was telling me about dialysis, the doctor, and I kind of said, well, I have a girlfriend, I do loads of sport, I'm in college. Is there no alternative to dialysis? And he kind of thought to me, he said, yeah, there is an alternative. Oh, really? What is it? It's death. Okay, so we are blessed. If my grandfather got kidney failure at 20 years old like me, he would have been dead at 21. So I'm alive and well, purely thanks to the miracle of modern medicine, healthcare. Pharmaceutical companies get a bad name, but I wouldn't be here without them.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's an amazing gift that we have through modern medicine, and the workers that show up every day and answer that call to help others and help patients who are in need, and such as dialysis and things like that. I mean, these workers, without these healthcare workers, we wouldn't be here right now. So shout out to all the healthcare workers and dialysis technicians. Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah, nurses for me. As I said, nurses were some of my best friends. When I got married, there was plenty of nurses from dialysis were at my wedding, because they translated the doctor speak in a way that I could understand it. They told me what was ahead. They helped me. They guided me. I love speaking at nurses' conferences because I give the doctors a hard time, and I heap praise on the renal nurses, especially because they're the people that kept me going.
Absolutely. Darren, if you want to mention where people can find you on social media.
Yeah, LinkedIn, Instagram. Yeah, just Google Darren Cawley, really. There's darrencawley.com. Send me a message. I'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. Well, I think this is going to conclude our session. If anyone else has a question, please ask it now, and we'll get it answered for you. It's been an honor to host this session with the one, the only Mr. Darren Cawley. And man, what an incredible session this has been. And this has been an awesome Kidney Trails Summit for the year 2022. And I really appreciate Anthony Reed and Dwaylen Williams and the whole team for putting this together. It's incredible.
And I'd just like to apologize to Dr. Noopy there. Not all doctors, absolutely. I've had some spectacular doctors. Doctors have saved my life, but I still am on the edge of the nurses' side, really. I love the nurses.
Absolutely.
I'm reading her message here, so.
Well, I guess we're going to send this back over to Anthony Reed with Kidney Trails.
Thank you, Jonathan. Hey, Darren, if you can just pop your screen down for your slideshow, and we'll end the session far as on our live stream. We appreciate all of our audience out there that's watching. We appreciate everybody out there that's attending. And let me tell you what's going to happen now is we're getting ready to go to a lunch break. So, grab a bite to eat, take a rest before you come back to the next session, which we're going to have some phenomenal speakers on there. So hang on just a second while we'll end, and we'll see you in about an hour or so. Uh-oh.